Hi everyone, my name is Zach, and in this video we will use the brushes we created in the last video and sculpt all the scales and the skin details, and we will also finalize all the high details on this creature. That means at the end of this video we will have the final high detailed sculpting, but without posing. This we will do in another video. Alright, without further words, let's get started. Before we start, one little thing I want to show you. Under the stroke method, what is also very useful is to use the anchored stroke method. Then we basically can drag and drop this and can control exactly in which direction the scales should show up. And if this is too strong for you, certainly you can decrease the strength here. So yeah, you can decide which way you want to go, just the space or this anchored stroke method. So, and keep in mind, right now we have dynamic topology disabled, symmetry I have still on, but we have flood filled the whole mesh, so we have the same resolution everywhere. And with dynamic topology disabled, we can now pretty smooth sculpt the details. And depending on your system, if you have a stronger system, certainly you can flood fill the whole mesh with an even higher resolution. But in this course, I don't want to get too high because I assume that most people don't have this ultra strong machines. So I start with the scales brush, and I will sculpt the scales everywhere where we have these physical scales already, but also a little bit over this, and in some other areas we will use the skin brush. So yeah, let's just start here. I decrease the strength a bit and let's go. So I think that's okay for now. You can see I've sculpted quite some scales here and there. Not everywhere, but yeah, on a big area here. And now let's switch over to the skin brush. And let's improve this even more. So just take care that this is not too strong. And for now just go over the places where we have not been now, except this armor plates here, or whatever you want to call this. So, and the nice thing is, if you make this brush pretty big and sculpt over the scales, you can add this additional details here, which are also pretty nice. So, but don't worry if you sculpt over these things here a bit, no problem, we can fix this. So what we also can do is to use our jittered dots brush here and add some additional dots here. Just for the extra bumpiness. So as next step, let's adjust this armor thing here. For this I use my sharp crease brush to increase the creases here. These areas I smooth if I've painted over this. And with the inverted sharp brush we can even sharpen these edges in the other direction. So we get this nice sharp edges here. So what we also can do, if this is looking not nice in some areas, you can use the flatten brush. But keep in mind, this also can look a little bit organic. So, and another way to sharpen the edges is the pinch brush to get this extra sharp finish. So when I'm looking at the scales here, I think I had made the strength a little bit too low. So the scales does not really pop out that much. So either we just go over it and add another layer of scales here, or we smooth this area a bit. So we just have this uneven surface. That's okay, I think. And then let's just try and see how this looks like if we increase the strength here a bit. And as you can see, then the scales are really popping out. And then we have also a better transition between the physical scales here and the sculpted scales. So same thing here. Let's smooth this area a bit. And this is also one thing you have to consider while sculpting. Don't be scared to smooth an area again or to change something completely. And now let's take the skin brush again and go over this here. So with the sharp crease brush, we can add some sharper lines here and there, and maybe also some kind of scars. And maybe for this we should disable the symmetry, so it does not look the same on both sides. So now let's edit these armor things here. For this I use my destruction brush, and I will add some of the dots here, but in this case I also disable symmetry and decrease the strength. And also you can invert this to add some little bumps here and there. So, and the last thing we add to this armor thing here is some scratches with the sharp crease brush. Just some additional destruction, and also disable mirror here. Alright, I think I'm through with all the details except for the jawbone. So let's select this one. We already flat filled the whole mesh here. So let's quickly add some scales here. In this case with symmetry on. Alright, now let's select everything here, and in the tools, edit, I click on smooth shading. Okay, and let's add some final touches here. I take the standard sculpture brush and without symmetry, and let's add some veins here. And as on the jawbone, let's also add a scar on the upper head here. But we have to be careful because I don't want this creature to look too evil. So do not add too much scars here. Okay, you may have wondered why the viewport looked a little bit different during the last minutes of this video. That's because I have a new system here, a new computer, and I just forgot to install the Quick Preference add-on. So now everything is back normal. And now let's go on. Usually I would now go on with the luggage, but I just realized we have to change one thing. If we take a quick look at the concept art, you can see we have this thing lying underneath the saddle, and it will be pretty hard to model this without knowing where the scales are in actual fact. Because as you can see, we just leave the scales away in this area because the saddle will there. But I think we just have to duplicate some scales here and mirror them to the other side again to just have a good reference how to model this cloth thing here. So since we did this before, I just will fast forward the whole process. I will duplicate with Alt D some of the scales, and then with an empty object, I will mirror them to the other side the same way we did before. And for better managing the whole stuff, I disabled the selecting for the creature, so I can't select this. Let's disable the other stuff here. And I will duplicate one of the scales with Alt D and move them to a new layer. And in this way we can easily select all the new scales and duplicate them to the other side. So this will be a little bit easier. Now let's select all of them here, press M and move them to the layer with the other scales. Alright, I'm through as you can see, and I would say now the creature looks even cooler because now we can also view it without the man on its back, and it's also looking nice. Okay, now I want to inspire you to change things. Creating something like this here is a very creative process, and sometimes you realize that maybe something is not the way you like it, and then certainly change the things so that you have something in the end which you like very much. Now I want to change two things. I showed this current state of this model to a friend, and he did not saw this model before, and the first thing he noticed is that somehow the scales down here on the feet are looking somehow wrong. Basically, he mentioned that they are pointing in the wrong direction. And yeah, I can agree with that. And if this something is that pops immediately to someone's mind when he's looking at this at the first time, then this is probably something you should work on. And if we take a look at the concept art, you can see it also feels more that the scales are pointing in the other direction. So this is one little thing I want to change, but before I want to change one other thing. When I'm looking at the scales, I thought, well, the other shapes are nice, but somehow they are not adding to the form so that it looks nicer than before. So in my opinion right now, I think we should leave all the scales at the same shape. So basically I select everything here, select one of the scales and press Ctrl L, make links object data. Now you can see all the other scales are replaced with the standard scale, and I think altogether this looks way more natural. Then I realized here's one scale overlapping, this I delete. And now let's change the scales down here. Let's enable the body. Let's disable selection for the body and just select this area down here. And now we have selected all the scales. Now down here under pivot point, I switch to individual origins. That means now I can scale, move or rotate all the scales individually. But I realize I have to deselect the claws. So now only the scales are selected. And if I press now R for rotation and then double Z, I rotate around the individual Z direction of every scale. And now let's type in 180 degrees, enter, and now we are basically rotated all the scales 180 degrees. Certainly this now does not fit anymore perfectly, so we have to change this. And I just do it on the one side and then quickly copy this stuff over to the other side. And for this we also can use the snapping feature again. Okay, and now I want to show you one other cool trick. Now all the scales on both sides are exactly the same, except here in the center, but everything else looks exactly the same. And now I want to randomize this. This is pretty easy. I go to Object, Transform, and Randomize Transform. Certainly all the scales need to be selected. And now down here in the operator panel, we can randomize location, rotation, and the scaling. Let's start with the rotation, and certainly I don't want to have some crazy randomness here, just very slight and subtle randomness. So let's just try with very low values here. So as you can see, 2 degrees for every angle. And now we have a little bit of randomness in here already. Let's also randomize the transformation, but very low, 0.05. Let's copy this value and paste it to Y and Z. And also the scale, but here I enable even scale because I don't want to scale them individually in all the different axes. I just want to scale them with the whole volume basically. So let's try 0.01. I think here we can go a bit higher. Right, exactly. Now everything is a little bit random. And I think in this way this is even cooler. So let's check it out with a body. And yeah, I think that's fine. Alright guys, that's it with this video. Now we have the creature in the highest detail level we will sculpt in the sculpting course. Now there's still the luggage missing, the saddle, and we still have to pose this creature.